Welcome back to the PCC podcast, and today we're going to be talking about why tracking your food is triggering for you. It's a long-awaited episode, and we're going to talk about how you can change that relationship with data and use the data without spiraling, okay? So if this is you, if you are somebody who you've tracked your macros before, and you know how, but you avoid it like the plague because it feels like a report card. You hate how you feel when you are using it, and you feel like it's a time suck, it's an energy suck. You feel like you're always failing when you're doing it. This episode is for you. So, especially if you get negative, hyperfixate, that sort of thing, right? But the reality is we can't keep avoiding it if we want to make real progress. I would love to say that there's some revolutionary way that I can teach you exactly how your body works and how food works without tracking anything. But I would be blowing smoke up your butt. And at the end of the day, I have gone a lot of different ways with this. Personally, I've tracked the majority of my food for the past 10 years, but I've had episodes where I felt like I got burnt out from it, so I completely stopped. And I have had seasons where I've not been tracking and I've gained weight. I've had seasons where I've not been tracking and I've lost weight. I've had seasons where I've not been tracking and I have maintained exactly where I was. And it's all been dependent on the relationship that I had to the numbers in the first place. Okay. And so that is the most important thing that we tackle. And that is how you are able to, and that's how you see like people who are successful in their fitness journeys. They're not just successful because they like hate tracking and they just white knuckle it, or there's something different in their brains that they're just different. They just like it. No, they have a better relationship with data, and that's something that you can work on. Okay. But in order to understand this, we kind of got to go back in our timeline of life and understand where this started. And this is going to hit for a lot of you perfectionists. Okay. So we learned our relationship with tracking food most likely much younger than food tracking was ever introduced into our lives. I know for me, I first downloaded MyFitnessPal when I was 14 or 15. And yeah, so pretty young, but there was definitely a relationship with numbers that I had prior to that was influencing how I looked at it. Okay. So if you're a fellow perfectionist, recovering perfectionist like me, you put a lot of your self-worth and value into the test scores that you got in school, your report cards, as you became an adult, work evaluations, progress reports, performance reviews, where there's high stakes, right? If you don't get a good report card, you don't pass school. If you don't get a good report card, you're grounded. If you don't get a good report card, you're a bad kid, or you get into the classes with the bad kids or the dumb kids or whatever, right? But if you get all A's, no one's got to worry about you, right? You're a great kid. You get lots of praise, and your parents speak highly of you, whatever it is, right? And all of that carries into adulthood, and most importantly, it carries into any relationship that we have with numbers. And for some of us as well, our parents were doing their best. But there are parenting styles that some of us had to live through where if we made mistakes, that meant we got punished or there was conflict, right? And so perfectionists especially learn to be extra careful to not make mistakes, to not rock the boat, right? And so this is why perfectionists see a lot of data as a report card rather than information, because we learned early on that safety was built around getting top marks, because no one would come for us, no one would worry, or we wouldn't be in danger of losing anything, whether that be tangible, like our job, our salary, right? Or status-based, right? Being on, the dean's list, getting all A's, being in a particular social group, right? Some kind of belonging. And so this is why tracking macros can be so triggering for some of us, because we never realize that we're doing the same thing when we're looking at our food, and we're making it inherently moral, okay? We're making it mean something about ourselves in terms of our morality, how good we are as people, right? And especially in a world where there's just a lot of judgment, right? Judgment around what people eat, what they weigh. A lot of us at some point have equated eating too much or being overweight with being a bad person, being a lazy person, whatever. and being skinny, being thin, with having good discipline, being a great person, being on top of it, right? And those two things are not exactly correlative, right? We can have great people with great traits and great qualities that are overweight or do overeat. At the same time, there are people who have wonderful bodies and horrible habits, right? So what we need to learn here today is the difference between awareness and punishment, okay? So awareness is understanding to problem solve, and it is rooted in curiosity, okay? Curiosity is one of the most fundamentally pure human states. You know who's really curious? Are kids. Little kids are so curious. They want to know everything about anything, and nothing actually means anything yet, right? So we want to adopt childlike curiosity. However, punishment is rooted in judgment and morality, right? And this is how we've typically been operating around our macros, which is why we hate it, right? No surprise there. But it's really important to understand, like, what happens when we don't face the music, when we don't face the numbers, right? Avoidance. And this is something that I see with clients a lot, especially when you hire a coach. You raise the stakes, right? Okay, I've added pressure. I hired someone. I should be getting better results. I'm reporting to them. I don't want to disappoint them. These are all natural thoughts to have when you hire a coach. And what I see and what I try to nip in the bud with most of our clients from the get-go is avoidance. Because when we don't track, because we're afraid of what we'll see, or we don't want to acknowledge what we put into our body, we don't want our coach to see, we're avoiding fear, avoiding punishment, right? Then we don't have any data to work with. And that's actually the most punishing thing, is that we don't know how to make a decision. We don't know whether you overate, you underate. And even if we could go back and recall it, it's still going to be, a 5-day late estimate that's like pretty off, right? And so then we're not able to make decisions on data. And then we have to make decisions based on emotion. This is what most of the women who are working on their fitness journeys alone, who come to me, are doing, is they are making emotional decisions instead of data-driven decisions in their fitness journey, and that's why they're stuck, right? They're cutting calories, they're overdoing cardio, they're saying screw it, overeating, or they stop trying. None of which lead to actual progress, and then things get worse both inside and out, because your progress is not moving, or it's getting worse, and you're spiraling more because you're not getting anywhere, right? And then it also reinforces the fact that, tracking is such a bad thing, because we're trying to track, we're not doing it fully, we're not actually getting all of the data, but because we are attempting to track and we're gaining weight, we're thinking, oh, tracking macros didn't work for me, right? And that is where avoidance is the most punishing thing that we could do to ourselves. And so we need to face what tracking means to us. Because I hate tracking often means I'm afraid of what I'm going to see, because I'm going to make it mean something about me, right? I'm scared I'm going to see bad numbers. What is bad? What's too much? What's too little? How do you actually know that that's the case, right? What we're saying here is I'm scared of the mirror that's going to be held up. It's going to show me that I'm making mistakes, show me that I'm not eating the way that I want to be, right? It's going to show us that we're not actually doing the things that we say we want to do, right? And then we make that mean that we are a bad person, that we're not disciplined, that we're a failure. And what we're making it mean, none of that is true, right? And so we are protecting ourselves when we avoid tracking. We are trying to protect ourselves from pain, from punishment, and from hard realities. But in actuality, we're punishing ourselves in the long run. So here's what we're going to do today is we're going to reframe this data. Okay, this data is a neutral tool for decision making. The numbers themselves, they actually have no meaning without context, right? Let's say 200 grams of carbs per day. If a 5-foot tall woman who does not move, who does not walk, who does not exercise, and is overweight, eats 200 grams of carbs a day, it might be too much, right? Very well could be too much. But if a 400-pound strongman athlete eats 200 grams of carbs in a day, he might pass out right? He might pass out because he's malnourished for the day and his training's demanding far more of him than those 200 grams can supply. And so data is objectively neutral, but it's what you make it mean about you that is the emotionally charged piece, right? And so here's where we need to grow, is we need to have the skill, not the trait, not the inherent thing, but the skill of staying regulated in the presence of this information. We have to start looking at everything from a place of childlike curiosity instead of judgment. So when you track, take note of your mental state. What are you saying to yourself? What is your inner dialogue? Start questioning it in the moment. Because if you struggle with this on your own, I would say that's the time to get a coach to help, because that's where we can intervene and start to unwind that inner dialogue. But that's how you start to stay regulated in the presence of that information. You get curious instead of judging. And you say, is that true? Right? And then you start to break it down. So this is where you can go from the version of yourself who only shows up when she knows she can be perfect, she can nail it, to the version of you who isn't perfect but problem solves through every moment and no longer spirals, and therefore sees better results because she's able to track, she's able to get the data, she's able to make decisions, and she finally has the information she needs to see the results that she wants to see. So let me know how this episode landed for you guys. That's all I have for today, but this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and something that I've come to after nearly 10 years in this industry is that it's never one or the other. The growth that you're looking for is always in the in-between of the thing that probably burned you out, and then the other extreme that you probably swung to. The middle of that is where your success lies, and living in the middle is one of the hardest things to do. So thanks so much for listening. Let me know if you guys have any feedback for this episode. Send me a message on Instagram. I'll leave my handle in the show notes so you can message me. I would love to hear feedback from this episode, what landed, what didn't, and just continue making better content for you guys. So thank you guys so much. Make sure to subscribe so you catch up on all the latest episodes, and I'll see you back here for the next one.